We're going to dive into an incredible story today. It's about how a centuries-old prophecy seemed to predict a massive clash of empires, connecting a spectacular golden age to an invasion that would literally change the course of history. Okay, so our story kicks off with a prophecy. And listen to the description, it's so specific. A future enemy with red, flat faces, small eyes, and even their shoes are described, made of hair. This was a warning of a conflict that was supposed to happen long, long after the Prophet Muhammad's time. So the big question is, who on earth were these people? To figure that out, we have to jump forward in time, hundreds of years, to a civilization that was, well, at the absolute peak of its power. And that brings us to the age of the great Islamic Caliphates. For centuries, these guys were a global superpower, the center of the world for learning and culture. But as we're about to see, even the most brilliant golden ages can have the seeds of their own destruction planted right inside them. So first up, you had the Umayyad Caliphate. They were masters of expansion, no doubt, but their rule was very Arab-centric. Then came the Abbasids, and they had a totally different idea. They were inclusive, welcoming Persians, Turks, and others right into the government. And that one simple change, it set the stage for something absolutely incredible. We're talking about the Islamic Golden Age, and the heart of it all was Baghdad's House of Wisdom. I mean, just look at this. It was the world's biggest library, a hub where all the world's knowledge was translated. They even had government funding for science. Geniuses like Al-Khwarizmi, the guy who basically invented algebra, worked here. I mean, this place was a powerhouse of knowledge for the whole world. But, every great story has a but, and this Golden Age had a huge one. See, the Caliphs built up this massive army of Turkish Seljuk soldiers to protect them. The problem was, this army got so powerful that it eventually just took over the state itself, leaving the Caliph as basically a puppet. The very army created to protect the empire ended up controlling it. And all this internal fighting, it had devastating consequences. For the first time in centuries, the Islamic world was so divided that it couldn't stop a major threat coming from the outside. Just think about this timeline for a second. For 450 years, Jerusalem was under stable Muslim rule. It started with a peaceful conquest. But then, in 1099, European Crusaders saw the weakness, they saw the disunity, and they came and shattered that long peace. And the stories from that time, they are absolutely brutal. This wasn't just a change in leadership. It was a massacre that sent shockwaves of trauma across the entire region. A holy city had been lost in the most violent way you can imagine. But it's often from chaos and disaster that heroes rise, right? And that's exactly what happened here. A new leader would emerge, born just 40 years after Jerusalem fell, a man who would become a legend. Now, this is where history gets wild. It's one of those moments that feels scripted. At the exact same time Salahuddin is rising in the west, trying to unify Muslims to take back their land, a boy named Temujin is born way out in the east. He also has a mission of unification, but his goal is totally different, pure conquest. You have two future titans on the planet at the exact same time, destined to change everything. So Saladin's first move was to unite all those fractured Muslim kingdoms. And then, in the year 1192, he did what everyone thought was impossible. He led his unified army and retook Jerusalem. It was this incredible moment of triumph. It felt like the glory days were back. But that victory celebration, it wouldn't last. Because while all this was happening in the west, way out in the east, that ancient prophecy was finally coming true. A storm was gathering, led by the boy who was no longer called Temujin. Now he called himself Genghis Khan. So you have to ask, what made this army so ridiculously effective, so terrifying? A big part of it was this simple, brutal rule. His soldiers were put in groups of 10. If a single one of them ran away in a battle, the other 9 were put to death. Think about that. Retreat just wasn't an option. The only way was forward. And here's the thing. Genghis Khan wasn't even planning to invade the Muslim empires at first. He sent a group to the neighboring Khwarezmian Empire to set up trade. But the Shah made a mistake that would doom his entire civilization. He executed the Mongol ambassador. And in their culture, like many others, that is an absolute declaration of war. The response was, well, it was annihilation on a scale nobody had ever seen before. In that one empire alone, the population was cut down by 90%. 90, an estimated 1.8 million people killed. Genghis Khan didn't just conquer, he erased. And this wasn't just physical destruction, it was psychological warfare. When he entered a conquered city, he supposedly told the survivors, "I am the punishment of God." Imagine hearing that after your city has been destroyed. It must have felt like the literal end of the world. And the Mongol storm just kept rolling. Decades later, in 1258, Genghis Khan's grandson, a man named Hulagu, showed up at the gates of the greatest city on earth, Baghdad, the heart and soul of the Islamic Golden Age. What happened next wasn't just the fall of a city. It was the end of an entire era. The accounts say the Euphrates River first ran red with the blood of the people killed. And then it ran black with the ink from all the priceless books from the House of Wisdom, which were just dumped into the river. The destruction of life and the destruction of knowledge. So, the prophecy had come true in the most brutal way you can imagine. The Mongol war machine seemed absolutely unstoppable. But just when it seemed like all hope was gone, history had one more twist in store. Right, so in Palestine, at a place called Ain Jalut, something incredible happened. The Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt stood their ground and fought back. And against all the odds, they won. This was huge. For the very first time, a Mongol army was completely smashed on the battlefield. And that single battle stopped their expansion westward for good. But the story has one last, totally unexpected twist. Just look at the names of the Mongol rulers over time. The first few generations, Genghis, Ogedei, Hulagu, they have Mongol names. But a few generations later, their descendants are being named Muhammad and Timur. It's just amazing. In the end, the culture of the people they conquered ended up conquering them. Which brings us to this really powerful final comparison. You've got Genghis Khan, builder of one of the biggest empires ever, remembered mainly for his ruthlessness. And then you have Caliph Omar, who also built a huge empire, but his legacy is one of justice and piety. And that really leaves us with one big question to think about. After all the wars, the golden ages, the destruction and the rebirth, what truly defines an empire's greatness? Is it just about its size, its power, or is it about the legacy it leaves behind for the rest of us?